Alright guys, going to start this chapter 10 lecture here with looking at medication labels, and that's what this chapter is dedicated to, is just really looking at how to read and understand medication labels, as well as medicine cups, syringes, and IV bags. And the reason for that, as we get into our dosage calculations next week, it's important to understand everything that goes into drug dosages, and knowing, how to read the label, then knowing how to administer that using the equipment that's used in the administration of medication. So looking on your screen here, I've taken a couple screenshots of some of the things from your text. Again, chapter 9. Don't forget, this is just more of a visual chapter, so I just wanted to just take, like I said, some shots from your text. And remember, you guys can find that by going to your My Math Lab, and on the the left-hand side of your screen, there should be just different options for you, and there should be something that says Pearson e-text, and your Pearson e-text, when you launch it, you can go to chapter 10 and you'll see all the same images I'm getting ready to show you now. So lots of different things here in chapter 10, but looking here first at medication labels, the very first thing we're looking at is the medication's trade name. Anytime you're looking at a medication where we're looking at a brand, this is what trade name means. Trade name is the brand. Up above that, I missed that as well. Another name for the medication is the generic. So medications, sometimes you purchase the brand name drug of a medication. The generic name will also be written on there. The trade name doesn't have to always be on there, as that's, again, like I said, the brand. The best way to indicate whether or not you're looking at a brand is when you see this R with the little circle around it, or the TM. R means registered, TM means trademark. So sometimes you'll see that written on a medication, and we're going to see some examples on the next couple slides. But just know a great example would be like Advil. Advil is the brand name of a drug. The generic is ibuprofen. So ibuprofen will definitely be written on that medication for that as well. But if you buy like Kroger brand ibuprofen, then you may not see Advil written on there, because it, again, is the generic. Generic is just the non-proprietary medication for that drug, as it mentions there, that's the chemical name of the drug, and includes any drug marketed under its chemical name without the advertising. So again, your trade name is going to be the advertised name. Another thing that you guys will see on a medication label is the manufacturer. This is, as it mentions there, the maker or the manufacturer of that drug. So typically there will be some type of company logo listed on that medication, or sometimes even it may actually say manufactured for. And a lot of popular names would be like Pfizer, Rorig. A lot of the examples that we're going to see, there is just a made-up pharmacy name, so you'll be able to see the name of that company. The next thing we're looking at there is the National Drug Code number. The National Drug Code, or also NDC, stands for three different things. You've got the manufacturer, the medication, and the container size. So it's typically separated by dashes to show, there's a number and then a dash, then medication. So a number for the manufacturer, then a dash, then a number for the medication, and then a dash, and then a different number for the container size. What's really easy about the National Drug Code number, anytime you're looking on a label, you will see those three letters, NDC, and you know that that is your National Drug Code number, so that's what we're looking for. So really easy to find. Now, the lot number, so really actually the lot number, and as we get down to the bottom, the expiration date. On a lot of the examples that I'm going to give to you guys, these are actually samples and not actual medication labels for an actual, they're drugs, but it's not actually been prescribed to anybody, so they may not be shown on your alls. But just to tell you what they are, the lot number is what's placed onto the label prior to shipping, so that we can identify the batch that it was created in. So lot number, 0786 may be, shipped all across, the United States, when they distribute that particular medication, it was created in that particular batch. But in the event of a recall, so maybe we need to recall that medication because something went wrong in the manufacturing process, we need to recall 0786, and then all the pharmacies know to look for that lot number and to send that back for that recall. So it helps to just identify that batch that it was created in. Whereas the expiration date, so down there at the bottom, the expiration date, again, just like any expiration date, even when we're talking about expiration dates for a food of any sort, that is the last date that this medication is viable, and so the medication needs to be discarded after that particular date. But going back up here to where we were, so we were looking then at the next part, so the next part would be the drug form, and that just is exactly what that stands for. It indicates what form the medication comes in, so whether it's a tablet, a capsule, it mentions there a cream, it could be a liquid, a suppository, a syrup. It'll indicate somewhere on that label the form of that medication. Then next we have the dosage strength. The dosage strength is how much medication is in each dose of that medicine. So if it's a tablet medication, that tells you how much medication is in every tablet. Every medication is different. You know, a tablet of ibuprofen may have so many milligrams in it, whereas if you buy Zyrtec, that has so many milligrams in it. They're two completely different types of tablets. So the dosage strength tells us how much medication is in each particular tablet. In a liquid medication, it'll tell you how many milligrams are in every milliliter, or sometimes just depending on the dose, a dose could be 5 milliliters or a dose could be 2 milliliters. And so we'll see that it'll show us exactly what each dose contains. Next one there is the usual adult dose. The usual adult dose tells us how this is typically taken, how an adult will usually take this medication. So even though most of these medications were prescribed, somewhere on there it might indicate, how that's usually administered. Let's see, then next you all will see the total amount in the vial, packet, or box, and that means exactly that it's going to indicate just how much medication is in that particular bottle. If it's a liquid medicine, or even if it's tablets, it tells you how many tablets are in that bottle or box. It'll tell you exactly what's on there. And then lastly down there is the prescription warning. Prescription warning just simply means that this is a medication that is available by prescription only, so you can't just walk into any pharmacy and pick this medication up. It has to have a prescription from a physician or somebody who has the ability to write a prescription. So any type of doctor or medical professional who can do that. So you'll see that on there, and I'll show you guys how that's listed. So examples here. I've copied a couple examples out of your book. So this one is one of the examples from your text too, where they've pointed out quite a few of the different things on here. And you can see then, just based on, what's being asked, it tells you how you could answer these questions. So this is, notice that, I showed you guys on the previous slide there that when we're looking for a trade name, we're going to somewhere see either this registered symbol or trademark symbol to indicate that it's a brand. That is nowhere to be found on this morphine sulfate, so that means that the morphine sulfate is actually the generic name of this drug. So that is how they've answered that question, the generic. And notice the trade name was not asked. If I gave you a label and there was not a trade name on there, I more than likely wouldn't ask you for the trade name. If I did, however, you could just write not shown, as we know that that is not on there. Let's see. So then let me get some of these things out of the way. So then what we're also seeing on here, it's asking for the manufacturer. You can see the manufacturer listed down here at the very bottom. It's a just made up company name, but PL Pharmaceuticals down there is just the company logo, so they've listed that for us. So that's where we can find the manufacturer, and that's how they've answered that. Looks like there was no national drug code number printed on here, so you don't see anything that says NDC, so that one was also answered as not shown. Let's see then, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Undo. So I meant to get some of these out of the way here. All right, so that was listed as not shown. Let's see, the lot number also you can see here, also not shown as our answer. Our expiration date is also going to be not shown down there at the bottom. The drug form, it tells us the type of medication that this is. Now this one could be a couple different answers. They put injection or milliliters. That shows the form of the drug on there, that it is an injection, so that would be just fine. Honestly, sometimes I've had people put liquid, and that is technically true as well, because it means that it is a liquid form. It is just a liquid that will be injected into the patient somehow. It even gives us the specifics up here. It says for subcutaneous, intramuscular, or slow intravenous, as that simply just means the route, like how it will be given. Subcutaneous means that it's going to be given into your skin, or underneath your skin. Intramuscular, meaning it will be injected into the muscle, and intravenous means into the vein. Not that you guys have to know that, but some labels give you even the specifics on that. So, just so you know exactly how that's going to be given. Now, the dosage strength, so I mentioned this to you guys earlier. I do want to point out that here it's telling us how much is in every single milliliter. On any liquid medication, it'll say, you might see that little slash there, so the 10 milligrams slash milliliter. That means that there's 10 milligrams in every 1 milliliter of this morphine sulfate. So every injection of 1 milliliter would provide a patient with 10 milligrams of that pure morphine. Now, not always is 1 milliliter considered a dose. So on another drug, it might be 2 milliliters would be considered a single dose. So you might see slash 2 milliliters. So we'll see that in one of our other examples, that it will be told to us on the label exactly what's considered a dose and exactly how much medication is in that dose. For tablet medications, that won't look like that. For tablet medications, it would just straight up say 10 milligrams. And because it's a tablet medication, that's assumed to be in every tablet. So we'll see that when we look at, actually, I think our next example. Usual adult dose, it does say over here on the right-hand side, it does say to see package insert, just says for complete prescribing information. So what was written there as the answer was just to see package insert. And the total amount in the vial, packet, or box, that's also what I have circled up there with the dosage strength. You can see that it does say it is just a 1 milliliter vial, so that means only 1 milliliter is contained in this particular package. Looking at the next, you guys will see something very similar. So here's another example. It is a generic. There's no R, to indicate that it's registered, or no TM to register that it's or to say that it's a trademark. So this is the generic name for this medication. The manufacturer, also PL Pharmaceuticals on this one. The national drug code number, you can see on this one right here. It does say NDC and then 0006-09-0963-31. So easy to find, as again, national drug code number will always say NDC in front of it, so it's really easy to spot. Once again, the lot number and the expiration date are not shown, again, for the purpose of them being just examples. So you're more than likely not going to see those on the examples that I give you, but you know what they are, and you know how to, if you're looking to spot those, lot number will generally say lot in front of it, and expiration date will typically say EXP for expiration, so it's usually easy to spot if you needed to see that. Drug form, it does say on there that these are tablets, and you can see that in a couple different places. Let me get some of these out of the way here just so you guys can, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to move all my different circles up here. So going back up to this label, so you can see actually in a couple different places, you can see it says 30 tablets right underneath the name. You can see it says each tablet contains 20 milligrams, and then even 30 tablets right here. So either way, a lot of different places on this label show us that that is a tablet medication. The dosage strength does just say just 20 milligrams. And again, when you see that any tablet or capsule medication, that just shows that that is per every 1 tablet. So that means for every 1 tablet, the patient would receive 20 milligrams. It's next week when we get into dosage calculations that I'll show you guys. Well, if a doctor orders 40 milligrams, for a patient to take every day, then that means he would just have to take 2 of these tablets. And that's what a dosage calculation will look like. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, but that is the dosage strength. It tells us right there are 20 milligrams in every tablet for this. The usual adult dose, it does ask us, so what would be the typical adult dose? Easy to spot there. It just says straight up usual adult dosage, and it says C accompanying circular, which very similar to C package insert, just means that there's something in the container or package that will provide that information for you. The total amount in the package or box, it does say 30 tablets in 2 different spots here, 30 tablets right here and right here. So we know that there are 30 in there. And then, like I showed you guys before, prescription warning means that it is available by prescription only. And you can see right there in the middle of that label, you can see it says RX only, and that's how that is indicated. RX just means prescription, so that means that it's available by prescription only. So nobody can just come into the pharmacy and get that whenever they want. They have to have a prescription for it. Okay, so taking a look at another example. So here's how this would be asked of you. What's going to happen on the quiz for this? I will give you a label with each individual question, and I will ask for the following questions. Again, more than likely, if it's not on there, I probably won't ask you for that. This is just how they've listed it in the text. So there is no trade name on this medication. There is a generic, though. So there you can see the name of the generic is listed for us as that atorvastatin calcium. Sorry, I can never pronounce any of these, but that's what that is. So that's the generic name. Trade name, again, is not on there, as, again, there is nothing on there that has the R with this little logo around it, or the little circle around it, or TM to indicate that brand. Manufacturer, once again, is PL Pharmaceuticals. That's what we're seeing on this as you guys are going through trying to answer these questions. Hopefully you guys are getting these right. NDC number, I am not seeing an NDC number on this, so again, easy to spot, that's what you would look for, is the letters NDC. So it looks like that would be not shown on this one. The lot number, again, lot number and expiration, you can see where those would be on your label, lot number, expiration, but again, they are not shown on this example label here. The drug form, it is a tablet. You can see there that it does indicate that these are tablets, so that's how I would answer that question. And the dosage strength, it shows us that in every tablet there are 10 milligrams, so our dosage strength is 10 milligrams. The usual adult dose, it does tell us dosage and use to C package insert, so we could just write C package insert for that. The total amount in the vial, packet, or box, so I actually circled over that with our, when I circled the 10 milligrams, but it does say there are 90 tablets in this atorvastatin calcium. So there's 90 in this package. And then the prescription warning, so just like on our last label, we could see RX only, so I would answer it with just RX only, that is listed there. So guys, that's how I would ask you these. I would just give you a particular label, and then I want you guys to just, answer the questions that are asked of you, and you just fill those in accordingly. So you'll see that on next week's quiz. And this, I wanted to show you guys this one to show, as just against our example earlier, that you can see here again with the dosage strength that this one is a liquid medication, and this time instead of just saying per milliliter, it says per 5 milliliters. That means in hydroxine pamoate that is the particular dose for that. So that's how I would answer that question. That is just that entire thing is your dosage strength. So we need to make sure that we include all of that, not just the 25 milligrams, to know that it's 25 milligrams per every 5 milliliters. Okay, and then the form of that is the oral suspension, so that one's just a little bit different. So we're still seeing the generic, no trade, same PL Pharmaceuticals manufacturer. We do have an NDC number this time, so that would be 0069544097. No lot number or expiration date. The drug form does tell us it's the oral suspension, so that was what I was showing you earlier. The dosage strength, that was the whole purpose of me showing you guys this label as well, that it is 25 milligrams per 5 milliliters, so that's the entire thing that's listed right there. The usual adult dose does actually tell us on this label that it's 1 to 4 teaspoonfuls 3 to 4 times daily, so that's our usual adult dose. The total amount in the vial, packet, or box, hard to see. Let me show this in yellow here. Here you can see that there are 120 milliliters in this entire thing. It is a liquid medication, so that's what we're generally looking for with liquid medications. It also tells us right here on the top of PL Pharmaceuticals that there are 120 milliliters in this package. And then our prescription warning, once again, is RX only on that one. All right, guys, so I hope that helps with your medication labels here. All right, as we move forward in this chapter, next section here we're looking at is our medicine cups. Medication cups, we've seen those before. We know that, when we're filling with fluid, we can lay it flat on a table and we can see where that indicator is. Maybe a little bit harder to read here on a piece of paper, but you can see where we've drawn, the author to the text has drawn this kind of light orangish color. That just simply means that's the surface of the liquid. So the example that we're looking at there would be right at the 20 milliliters. So that's how, the example is that, they said to pour 20 milliliters, and so you're seeing that right here at that 20 milliliter indication point right there. All right, looking through the next ones then. So looking at, say, number one, we're seeing, and you can look and see that it's household measurements on the left, metric measurements on the right. The reason why, again, it looks like that number one is right at the 2 teaspoons, so we can answer that as either 2 teaspoons, or again, that is equivalent to 10 milliliters. The reason why it looks like it's just underneath 10 milliliters is because 1 teaspoon isn't exactly 5 milliliters. The equivalents that I gave you guys when we were covering household measurements at the beginning of the quarter are approximate. So it looks like it's just slightly underneath, and that's okay. You could just indicate it as 10 milliliters or something underneath. But since it's right at the 2 teaspoons, that's probably your better answer for that one. Whereas at number 2, looks like it's right at the 1 tablespoon measurement. So that's what we put there, which is, yes, 15 milliliters is just fine as well on that one. On number 3, it does fall right at the 2 teaspoons, so that one's pretty easy. Tablespoons, which is equivalent to 30 milliliters. So that would be just fine as well. And then lastly, it looks like it's halfway between the 1 and the 2 on the teaspoon side, so that would be 1.5 teaspoons. And if you're indicating that in metric units, so halfway between 5 and 10 is what's being shown there. And so that would be probably about 7.5 milliliters or somewhere around that. Whoops. Okay, so moving forward then to our syringes. So the next section shows us syringes, and I'm going to move to the next couple slides just to show you some examples, and then I'll come back to this one. But there's 2 ways that you guys may see these. You may see some syringes like the ones you're seeing on the screen right here, where they are empty syringes. There's nothing, they're not pre-filled. It just says to mark where we would show an 18 milliliter dose. And if you've had a chance to glance through chapter 10, so let's see if I can go back. Not so much number 1 on this screen here, 18 milliliters. This is a big milliliter syringe, so here you can see it holds up to 35 milliliters. On these larger syringes, you can see they're just counted off in 1, so those are a little bit more straightforward. For that reason, you would just count off in 1s there, so you can see like between the 5 and the 10, for instance. So there's 4 lines between the 5 and the 10. So that means that those lines between would be 6, 7, 8, and 9. between the 10 and the 15 would be 11, 12, 13, 14. Makes sense. So you're just counting in order. Then if this is 15, here's 16, 17, 18. So there's where, whoops, I can't draw very well. There's where 18 would be. Like I said, though, you're not going to see ones too much like this because you are going to see some already pre-filled syringes instead. I drew some of these in your text. So let me go back to those empty ones. I want to show you guys these first. What we're looking at down here, the one on the bottom, this is a 1 milliliter syringe. You can tell based on, down here at the end, you can see that it only holds 1 milliliter of fluid. Now, compared to the syringe that's above it, holds 10 milliliters of fluid. Lots more than what that other syringe is indicating. So just to point out that small one down at the bottom again, looking at that, so looking that it holds only 1 milliliter, then that means, again, where we're seeing all these increments in between the end and then, or the end and then the front of the syringe, notice that they're marked off in decimals. So you see 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and so on and so forth. And there's 9 dashes in between the 0.1 and 0.2. Very, very similar to if I had a syringe that was marked off, and I'm just going to draw a pretend one up here at the top, marked off as 1, 2, 3. If there were 9 dashes in between, so that means 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then halfway would be the halfway point. So that would be 1.5, right? So if we're looking at the halfway, we know that that's 1.5, so it'd be 1.5. Same thing with between 2 and 3. If there's not, and I'm sorry, these are super, off. But then halfway between 2 and 3 would then be 2.5, correct? So what that means is those increments then further in between that, like maybe the very first dash after the 1 on that one, that would then be 1.1. The next dash after that would be 1.2. The next dash after that would be 1.3, and so on and so forth. Whereas then, as we continue to keep counting, and I'll count here in black, so this would be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. That's why this can then be 1.5, making this then 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9. And then that's why the next one is 2. We would count the same way between the 2 and the 3. So 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. Here's 2.5. 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, and there's your 3. So that's how they're counted off. They're counted off as just, between 1 and 9. So you count them off in ones. Very, very similar structure down here, again, because you're seeing 0.1, and then there's 9 lines in between before you get to the, well, let me actually do this. So let me show this in a different color. So this is 0.1, this is 0.2. That just means the decimal has been moved in front. So very similar to what we saw up here at the top example. Now let's just imagine there's a decimal in front of our 1 and our 2. That just simply means our decimal gets moved in front of the halfway point as well. So instead, halfway between 1 and 2, or I'm sorry, between 0.1 and 0.2, and let's go down back to the bottom down here to show that that would be 0.15. And then all the increments in between would be 0.11, 0.12, or 0.12, 0.13, and we're counting them off very, very similarly to what we did up there at the top. So looking at that, let me actually erase what we have down here. So looking at that bottom syringe, it says to mark an 0.84 milliliter dose. So what that would mean is we're going to go to the 0.8, so we're going to start there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to count 4 lines behind that. And so that would be, let me zoom in a little bit further. So if we counted 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be this line right here. So right there at the line right before the halfway point. So that would be 0.84. We just start by going to the 0.8 first, and then you can see that that's how we would count that. Erasing that, let's imagine on that same syringe it said to mark a 0.36 milliliter dose. Very similarly, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start at the point 3, and then I'm going to count 6 lines behind that. So that would be, as I zoom in a little bit here, so here's a point 3, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so that line would be right here. That one right behind the 0.35. And again, these are going to be a little bit, hopefully a little bit more clear on your all's homework assignments and your quizzes. Since you all don't have a paper quiz, it may not be something as easy as drawing an arrow. So more than likely you're going to see syringes. So to this one, remember that one I drew up at the very top up here, how at first I showed that they were counted off as just as just 1, 2, 3. The 9 lines in between indicated 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So it was similar to our 1 milliliter syringe, but just again, we're seeing that it's just a whole number in front now. So I skipped over some of the empty syringes. I do want to point out one on this screen, though. We didn't really talk too much about number 3. What number 3, the difference between, say, the one that I have up at the top up here that we drew earlier, and that was one we saw an example with on the next slide that had the stopper in it. You see that the distance between 1 and 2, there are 9 lines in between 1 and 2, so that's why we could count off in ones, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. That's why this one in between could be 1.5. It's a halfway point. Well, like on number 3, that one's going to be a little bit different, because on number 3, now when we're looking at the space between 1 and 2, you can see there's only 4 lines between there. So now they're being counted off a little bit differently. Instead of counting that as 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, if we counted it the same way, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, this one would have to be 1.5. And it's not. We've already made it to the 2. So instead, when you see syringes like this, keep in mind that everything is evenly spaced apart. So here we're going to count those increments in between as 2's. So we would instead count this as 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. And same pattern between the 2 and the 3. This would be 0.2, 0.4, sorry. Okay, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. And so on and so forth. So that means, you know, this would, if say there was a line pointing to, again, that's how you guys are going to be seeing them, is there's already going to be a line pointing to these. So if say there was a line pointing right here, so we've just gone past the 5, so that means that indicates it's going to be a 5 point something. And since we are at the last line before the 6, we're somewhere closer to 6 than we are to 5. But remember, these that have 4 dashes in between, we count them off in 2's. So it's not 5.2, 5.4, 5.6, that would be 5.8. So that's what we're looking at there. So just remember on these, those increments are counted off in 2's instead. So if let's say, oh, I didn't mean to draw that random line. I'm trying to zoom a little bit here. Okay. So let's say we were pointing to the second line past the 8. So that means, again, that's going to be 8 point something, but we count this off in 2's. So the first line is 8.2. That makes this one 8.4. So a little bit different than that one we saw previous. Oh, I didn't mean to. Going to see from just glance all kinds of different sizes. And so just a couple different things here. The second slide that I showed you guys, where you see these pre-filled syringes, and I'm asking you to tell me how many milliliters are in that syringe. So here at the top of the screen, you guys are seeing that exact same syringe we just finished up with. So looking at this, that real small, again, only holds 1 milliliter of fluid. So I know that it's just a small syringe here, so that's why they're counted off in tenths, so 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. And then the lines in between, those are your hundredths. Now, conveniently, the one we're seeing on number 1 is right at the 0.8 marker there. So you can see if we were to even zoom in a little bit further, if I can. It looks like I can't zoom in any further. Maybe I can. There we go. I can zoom in a little bit further. You can see it's right at the 0.8 marker. So that one would just be 0.8. But no matter what, if you saw, you know, maybe there was an arrow pointing to the, let's say, the second line after the 0.6, then we know that it's going to be 0.6 0.6 something, but then 2 lines behind it would indicate that that's 0.62. So that's 0.62 milliliters if the arrow was pointing there. All right. And then very similarly, if let's say the arrow was pointing to the line right here. So then we know because it's behind the 0.4, that's going to be 0.4 something. And then we just need to count how many lines were past the 0.4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like we're at 0.48 right there. So those will be, like I said, a little bit clearer to see on those. But that's how that will be indicated on your all's homework assignments there. Whereas then, let's see, it looks like on that second one. Now the problem with these, I know you got to watch out for that stopper. The stopper that's in there, that little hump part of the stopper, don't let that get in your way. It's where the first straight part of that stopper is. That's where that measurement is taken. So here, what we're looking at, this is very similar to the picture, or the one that I drew on the print that there on that second one. So that's what you're seeing. They're counted off in halves. So there are 9 markings you can see between, oh, whoops, that's not where I meant to draw that little line. There are 9 markings between the 1 and the 2. So here's your 1, here's your 2. So that means that, again, the first line behind that 1 would be just 1.1. The second one would be 1.2, and so on and so forth. That next line would be 1.3, this one would be 1.4, and that's why that one can be 1.5. Making the very next one 1.6, the very next one 1.7, and then you'll see the same pattern, 1.8, 1.9, and 2. And so you'll see the exact same as you go between 2 and 3 as well. So with that being said, since our arrow is pointing right behind the 2, you guys can see that that would be 2 point, we know it's going to be 2 point something, but then we'll just count 1, 2, there's 2 lines behind it, so that would be the 2.2. So that's what we're seeing there on that syringe. So that one has 2.2 milliliters in them, or in that one. Let's see, and then that very last one is another 1 milliliter syringe. It looks like we're halfway between the 0.3 and the 0.4, so that would make it 0.35, that halfway point on there. Okay, so let's take a look. So again, the ones that already have our stoppers in it, so like that one that we saw a second ago, these where we see the lines between 1 and 2 are much greater. We see there's 9. Those are the ones we count off as 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 in between. So there's 1.1, there's 1.2, 1.3, and we just count in order. So a little bit different than the one we saw previously here. All right. We already saw that 1 mil. Some like these that are already pre-filled, and you need to then indicate where the arrow is, and then so the object would be to tell how many milliliters are in the syringe. As of syringes. I'm just going to the next one. I'm going in order and what you guys can see in your book. So number 3, another 1 milliliter syringe, looks like it's right at the 0.5 marker, so that the answer to that would just be 0.5 milliliters on that one. And then looking at the bottom, we're seeing that one where we're seeing that we could count off in 0.2s. Again, that one's tough because it looks like it's covering up our 6 and what we can see, but if you can see here, this one looks like it's going to be our 5.8 like we saw previously here. So here's our 5, but then looking at the lines behind that, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, it looks like it's pointing to the 0.8. So that one's going to be right at the 5.8. And these are the ones I grabbed from your text. You'll see some other examples on your homework. But again, keep that in mind, that that's what's going to happen is you guys will receive a syringe, and it will just, have an arrow pointed to that syringe, and I just need you to tell me where that falls, or where what's being pointed out on that particular syringe. So I hope that helps with that. The last part of Chapter 10, guys, these aren't too bad. These are your IV bags. In an IV bag, they're actually filled with 1,000 milliliters of fluid. On the screen here, you can see the increments going down the side of your IV bags are counted off in ones, but what they actually are indicating are hundreds. What happens is, I keep trying to zoom and I keep accidentally drawing random lines, but what happens is on these syringes, and on these IV bags, If this IV bag was filled, it'd be all the way up here to the 0, and there'd be all kinds of fluid in here. This means that this is a filled bag, full of 1,000 milliliters of fluid. What happens is, over time, that IV bag will start to drip. It starts to drip out of the bottom down here and into a tube, and then goes directly into the patient's vein. Over time, that will slowly drip out depending on the rate that's been set for that particular IV. And then what happens is maybe we come back to check that fluid level later, and maybe it's down at the 2, and there's all this fluid in here. What that indicates is that we have administered, or we have infused, 200 milliliters to this patient. That's what these indicators mean, that this is 0, so that means it's filled. But then 1 is 100, 2 is 200, 3 would be 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. You guys get the idea with that. So that's what that shows, is that there's 200 milliliters that have been given to the patient. That's what happens when we're at the 2, and that's how that's read, is we know what has been given. But what you're also going to be asked is in what is remaining. Well, if there was 1,000 milliliters in an IV bag, and we have given 200, then that means there's 800 remaining. So every time, guys, you're always going to be asked how much has been infused and then how much remains. What happens, though, on these is you oftentimes will see where they fall kind of in between. Like on number 1 here, looks like it falls about halfway between the 8 and the 9. Keep in mind, 8 and 9 actually mean 800 and 900. So halfway between 800 and 900 would actually be 850. So we have given 850 milliliters to this patient. Well, since again, a filled bag was 1,000 milliliters, 1,000 minus 850 means that there are 150 milliliters still remaining in the bag. It's important to know how much is still remaining so we know based on what needs to be given to the patient. This one looks like our example. This one is, right at the 2, so that means we have infused 200 milliliters to that patient. And then because of that, oops, I keep trying to move this picture. I end up drawing random lines. And because of that, that means that there are 800 milliliters left in this IV bag. Again, that's just that subtraction. On the next example, looks like we're down here, looks like it's right at the 9, so that, well, that's a horrible arrow. That's right at the 9, so that means we have infused 900 milliliters to the patient, so therefore there are 100 milliliters left in the bag. So again, you always want these two numbers to total up to 1,000, since that's what a filled bag would indicate, but the indicator that we're pointing to, or that's where the fluid level is how much has been given to the patient, so how much has been infused. The difference between IV bags and syringes, there aren't exact increments in between, so when you have a case like this, like on number 4, where it doesn't fall right at the 5, it's definitely not halfway, so we know it's not quite to 550. So all of your answers may vary on this one. So on the quiz, I'll know that, and I'll know that, I'll go back and override that and double check it, so I'll take lots of different answers for these. As long as you know that it's past the 500, so meaning that it's past that, it hasn't quite made it to halfway, so I know it's not yet 550. So a couple of acceptable answers would be like 515, 510, 520. I mean, anything that indicates that it's just past 500 and not quite to the 550 just yet. So a couple different answers may be given on this one. So what's going to matter then is that you do your subtraction correctly based on how you answer that question. So if, say, you said the volume infused, it looks like it's about 525, then we need to make sure that we do our subtraction correctly, as 1,000 minus 525 is going to give us a very specific answer, 475. So make sure that we subtract that. So meaning, had we have answered that a little bit differently, if let's say that we said, oh, that's about 510, that means remaining 1,000 minus 510 would be 490. So your answer your answer for remaining is dependent on what you said in the volume infused. So make sure that you just answer that accordingly. So like I said, on these, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be kind of quite a few different answers on that one. But as long as you're showing me that you know that it's past a certain point, that I know that. Okay, and those are your IV bags. So I hope that helps, guys, with Chapter 10. If you guys have any questions, be sure to let me know.